Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and I am honored today to have the last person who is a main member for Action for Assange, Andrew Zygmunt, with me to not only discuss the latest on Julian Assange, but also ground level activism. The fact that Tulsi Gabbard has announced she will be taking part. I believe it's in tomorrow's debate, or this week. I think it is tomorrow. And
Yep, it's tomorrow the 15th.
yeah, and the fact that we have a media that is tried to sell us on gun range footage in Kentucky as a war on the border in Syria to sell us more war. His name is Andrew Zygmunt. The website is Action for Assange. You can visit it here. And every Wednesday night, they also do live stream vigils talking about Assange and the related issues and what's going on with his case. How are you today, Andrew?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I talked about with your co-host Taylor in our last broadcast earlier this week was on-the-ground activism. Activism that goes beyond the keyboard warriors of old, the people on message boards, the websites, the retweets, the Facebook. And, this, when I saw this, I was like, it's good to see some old school on-the-ground posting on the streets and saying, hey, be the media. Hands off Assange, and it's something that anybody can do in their community. So really, what motivates you to get involved with things like this?
So, the thing that motivated me originally to start hanging posters was seeing Julian dragged out of the embassy. That was really like the linchpin for my activism. Like, I had been a political activist, I'd run for office, but in no way had I ever seen anything effectively change by trying to work inside or outside of the duopoly through a rigged political process. So instead of having to abide by all the laws and all the rules of the way the political machine works, I just decided to move it into the realm of free speech and expression and activism instead. And I actually met Taylor through the Anonymous Bites Back podcast, which I recommend for everyone because they cover, just like you, out of the narrative news. But once I got to DC on Friday night, early Saturday, the protests had moved from DC to the embassy into the UN in New York City. So I really wasn't sure what to do at that point because I was basically in DC reflecting at the British consulate by myself out there. And it more or less was, hey, everyone just needs to do what they can. Like, people can't afford to just drop their lives and go to Washington, DC. But anyone can afford $18 and a staple gun and go hang some signs. So that was like the initial spark behind trying to get Action for Assange, and even the vigils organized was just trying to show people that you can do what you can with the time and the money that you have and still make an impact.
Absolutely. And, one of the reasons that I focus on Tulsi Gabbard on this channel, she's far from perfect. I'm not in love with her connections to the CFR. Some of her answers on torture have been a little iffy. But one of her strongest positions, in my opinion, is the fact that she would drop all charges against not only Edward Snowden, but Julian Assange as well. And you would have to think that if she would do that, she wouldn't allow a 14-part indictment that basically criminalizes publishing real documents that expose real corruption and high-powered abuses within our military-industrial complex. Because without Assange, would we really know how deep the abuses went at Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo Bay, and other black sites? So can you speak to how really the supposed anti-war party, the left, the Democrats, are anything but at this point, and that's why it's important she is on that debate stage?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're literally have just been taken over by neoconservatives. Like, they're no different than what the Republican Party is. They just cheer for war because the military contractors give them a lot of money because they can write government contracts that give them a lot of money. So it's literally just this revolving door where you see people like, I believe it was Mattis who actually worked at Raytheon, I believe. And you see people like, what's his face? I can't remember his name now. The National Security Advisor, John Bolton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he got removed from office, and now what's he doing once he's out of the White House, just getting back into the national security state. So it's one of those things that it's just this constant revolving door of people walking in and out of contractor positions into positions of political influence and vice versa. So it's something that without actually seeing how it works behind the scenes, we would have no idea. Like, for example, the early releases, I think it was the second or third WikiLeaks release, where it was, I believe it was the Afghanistan shopping list, where it showed that the cost to purchase a rocket launcher was a penny. But we, as the U.S. citizens, were paying almost $800 per rocket launcher when the manufacturing cost was a cent. So you can just see the gross abuses, even without looking at the war crimes that are in like the Iraq war logs and the Afghan war diaries.
Yeah, no, yeah, I don't know whether it was Iraq for sale or what the documentary was, but you could see how they were overcharging for laundry that wasn't being done. That if an 18-wheeler would lose a wheel, well, let's not replace the wheel. Let's blow the fucking 18-wheeler up and charge the people. We'll just buy another one. The abuses of the monetary aspect of this military-industrial complex machine are often overlooked. But it's hard for me to overlook them when they are costing people here all this money while we're costing lives overseas. And we really don't talk about those lives anymore. It's very odd to me that now it's convenient for the United States media to be concerned about the Kurds and brown people when they're not concerned about the Afghanis, the Libyans,
the Yemenis.
Yeah, the Yemenis, exactly. The Iraqis, the people of Iran. The fact that Iran and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard are defending a nation of 80 million people that will have the backing of the Russian military if we decide any real funny business in this country, perpetuating us on this path towards more and more conflict and more war that will cost more and more lives, rather than withdrawing from these wars of aggression, these regime change wars, as Tulsi calls them. Who do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
The paradox is if we withdraw from these wars, then our economy crashes. Because literally everything that's going on as far as financial gains are built around the military-industrial complex and production. For example, the manufacturing companies, Tool and other entity, their primary customers are military contractors and oil. So if something happens and we stop going to war, a bunch of people get laid off in manufacturing sectors. They no longer have to machine shop, anything else that goes on building our military.
Well, it's funny you said that because I remember, I think it was right around the time that Trump was ready to make that $400+ billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. Rand Paul was asked by Wolf Blitzer that very question. Well, what happens if we don't sell them the weapons? Isn't that going to hurt our economy and take away jobs? As though an economic interest should take precedent over, the many lives that we're costing through, our drone programs, through our support of Saudi Arabia in Yemen, us picking the targets, supplying the weaponry. And, one of the biggest things that I think should have been a lot more controversial about this Trump administration that never gets brought up. I mean, if you want to impeach the guy, if you want to start going after him criminally, how about the fact that he vetoed the bill that both Congress and Senate passed to get us out of that situation in Yemen and stop, aiding this thing. And as Rand Paul says, just another extension of our war machine.
Absolutely. And I mean, he highlights it perfectly because all that does is just allow the beast to continue. And that's one of the paradoxes of the situation that like the empire has put us into is if we do stop these wars, then we stop our economy. And the president that does decide to stop it is the one that brings America to a grinding halt. So there has to be this double-edged plan almost that God forbid socialism, but the government actually fund cooperatives and alternative groups to build power outside of that base, surrounded around rebuilding our communities through things like municipal banking and municipal broadband systems, and having the cities actually own the corporations that fix the roads to do employment programs on the local level and get people into those local unions to start making decisions at the community to reduce the power of the federal and state governments. So it's this whole big, there's not just one answer. We just kind of have to step in and overthrow everything and say, hey, we don't have the money to keep doing this. We don't want to fight for the Saudi Arabians who are willing to fight for the last dead American. Like, that's not an ally, that's an owner. Like, it's crazy to me.
I couldn't agree more. Action for Assange is the website. How can people not only support your organization, support Unity for Jay, but also support Julian Assange and the message that he's brought to not only the American people, but the world populace on these issues? How do they get involved?
So the biggest thing I would recommend is just voice. Unity, whether signs, pat flyers, voice at local political events. Like, the thing with it being political season now that I would like to encourage everybody to do more than anything is go to events for candidates that you don't support and take an issue-driven approach. Don't talk about anyone else. Don't talk about ideology. Just talk strictly about policy. And the most specific thing you can address is the issues of free speech and the attack on the free press with Julian Assange's arrest. Because you find support for that in the Trump base, you find support for that in the Democrat base. And if we can get people to Trump events passing out signs that say free Julian Assange, no more torture, we can start to make impacts and build allies across political boundaries based on the idea that if we want to have these discussions about ideology, we have to have a free and open environment to do that in. Otherwise, all we're doing is living under state tyranny.
You know, I couldn't agree
So
with you. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
I'd recommend going to action_for Assange on Twitter or actionforassange.com. If you're interested in getting involved but aren't sure how to start, you can email me, actionforassange@protonmail.com.
And, you know, you talked about going to events. You know, one of the more powerful videos I saw regarding Assange was just Bernie Sanders being asked at a rally about his position on whether or not he would exonerate Assange, and he refused to answer. He said, I can't answer that. I'm aware of the issue, and continued to move on. And this is supposed to be our anti-war hero of the left. But when you really look at Bernie Sanders, he wasn't even able to stand up to Hillary Clinton and the DNC machine when he actually won the nomination back in the race for 2016. So I think it's very smart to have that issue.
And even with Bernie as an anti-war candidate, he's voted for tons of the military funding bills. He supports the drone strike program. So he's not innocent by any means.
Awesome, brother. I really appreciate your time. At Andrew Zigman is his Twitter. Action for Assange is the website. I thank you for joining me, brother. Anything else to say?
No, just keep up the good work, man. Thank you for having me on.
All right, thanks for joining us. And folks, I am doing this 3 to 7 times a day via this very YouTube channel. Everything from what the media will not tell you about Conor McGregor, to Epstein, to Nexium, to Bilderberg, to Syria, to CIA whistleblowers, and more. So make sure you're thumbing these videos up, you're sharing them with other people on social media and beyond. And you can also watch all of my documentary films free right here in the playlist section. Loose Change Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture, all free here. And like I said, guys, I give it all away for free, and I'm hoping you're going to support me financially. You know, I'm certainly not bitching, but I'm hoping to hit the $5,000 goal this month. And in order to do that, we're already a week behind. I'd have to double this by tomorrow or close to it. I don't think we're going to do that. But hey, if you're into independent media, if you want to go beyond the left-right paradigm, if you want to talk about subjects that matter where you're not going to hear it anywhere else, hopefully I'm your guy, because I'm trying real hard out here. And that being said, I got nothing but love in my heart for all of you people out there. I want to thank you very much. I will see you all on the flip side.